Taylor, welcome to the Permastoked podcast. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me. I'm stoked
Right
to
on.
combine forces. It's
Yeah,
cool.
exactly. So we're not on weird waves right now. We're on Permastoked. How does that feel to be on the other side?
You know what? It's really good. And this is I think this is my third podcast or like interview. It's my second podcast, but my third like interview since doing the podcast. And I think it's cool because it's like I don't know. I feel like we can learn so much from each other, and everybody has a different style. So I feel like it's really good for my interview skills to be on the other end. But it is weird because you always wonder, like, what's going through my guest's head when they're talking to me. And, now I get to be, you know, in that mindset. So,
Yeah, and I always feel like, does my guest really want to be here? Like, what's in it for them? Like, do they care about this as much as I do? But being on the other end last night, it was like, I feel like in our society, we've been sort of programmed to think that talking about yourself too much is bad. So we don't do it as much. But it was nice to just let it loose. And it honestly, I feel like it brought up stuff about me that I didn't even know really until I said it to express it.
yeah, I totally agree. And I think it's interesting because what I've learned is like people love to talk about themselves. Like actually,
Hmm.
it's like scientifically proven. Like it might be that you talk like you're not supposed to talk about yourself, but we do actually love um talking about ourselves just like we like hearing our own name, right? So if the best way to greet you is, say your name, Derik, and just keep saying like, thank you, Derik, whatever, it puts you at ease because you know what your name is and you know that I'm acknowledging who you are for your name. It's the same, I think, when we talk about our stories because when do you get to sit down for an hour and talk about only yourself? It's pretty cool.
Yeah, it is fun. Yeah, you're usually talking about current events or what's been happening lately.
Yeah.
Um, but to sort of go over your origin story, it's kind of neat.
Yeah, it is. It is. And I think, just those little blips in life that people didn't even realize were interesting for other people. And even myself, when I talk about my life or things that I've done, the things that stick with people are not usually the things that, you think are cool. It's like what other people think about your life. It's very cool. I like it. Yeah.
Yeah. So, what has that response been like for you? Um, through putting yourself out there through the podcast, have you had people, reach out to you saying, "Oh, I can identify with this or that," or "Thank you for talking about this," or
Yeah, well, I think what's been interesting is having I think the lake surfing community, but also the river surfing community has been exponentially supportive of what we've been doing and just saying like, yeah, I hear this. I think the episode number 4, which it's it kind of got lost because it was at the beginning, but it's a very good episode. It's with Robin Lanai, and I think women that listen to that podcast, it's just so relatable. It's just everything about women and surfing that you like shouldn't talk about, but you joke about, like when you're on your period or if your boob slips out when you're surfing, and just all these ridiculous things that are
"Oh,
like
wow,
that. Like that's a woman problem, but it's
yeah,
hilarious to joke and laugh about that. And that I got a lot of comments on that episode, and I think the the John Wayne Freeman, we got a lot of response from that because he's so relatable, I
mm,
think. And he's like, there's everything good about a 40-something-year-old man who's able to find his dreams at that age, because I think that we don't hear that story very much. It's very much like a 18-year-old star on Instagram gets famous overnight. It's not this like guy who's put in the work and is getting what he deserves. Like that's just a great story. So we got a lot of following from that episode. But
mm,
yeah.
awesome." Yeah, I have. I've listened to quite a few, but I have the entire um, library downloaded, and that John Wayne Freeman is one I've been meaning. I really want to listen to that one.
Yeah, that's a super good one, and if I can recommend watching the like actual YouTube video version. It's just
Okay.
so it's really funny, and the facial expressions and the just interruptions. It's just like he's just so funny. He's so funny, and it's just really like it's just it's one of my absolute faves. Yeah.
Awesome, awesome. So yeah, the Weird Waves podcast. I like how you chose that name because you are, your origin is a Great Lakes surfer, but you really left it open there. I take it that was on purpose.
Yeah, that was on purpose because I didn't want to just talk to surfers. I wanted to talk to kind of all different people that are involved in water sports. I
Hmm.
think on the lake, especially where I lived in Indiana, there's way more of a kite surfing community there than there is a surf community. And
Okay.
so I wanted to kind of leave that door open for just whatever. And I mean, I guess wave can be whatever you want it to be. It can be an actual wave, it could be a sound wave, which I've got a guy that I'm going to have on who doesn't surf, wants to surf, but is just he found our podcast through this giant decal that my husband has on the back of his car. It literally
Okay.
just says at Weird Waves Podcast. And we've had people tag us in it, like seeing us on the highway with all the boards and
Oh,
like waving
cool.
to us, which is cool. But he makes these like weird, super weird sound instruments, like musical instruments that are just like you can't even imagine what they make, and he names them. And I'm like, dude, we have to talk to you because if you're weird, right? So I just feel like, every once in a while, I like to throw a guest out there that might not be um, a typical, like, not a typical surfer, but might not surf or whatever, but that I think my audience would enjoy or that I enjoy talking to. So, um,
Yeah,
yeah.
I like that part too. There's so much from this culture or the interest of the people from this culture that you can tap into. So that episode will be really easy to name, like weird sound waves. Done.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
You're
we don't
welcome.
actually, yeah, yeah. Well, the thing is we don't actually name any of the episodes. We just title them the name of the person. So
Yeah,
I also like for us, we just keep it really simple. We give like a little 3-part blurb about whatever we talk about, and that's kind of it. And then I've kind of changed it up with the YouTube description, just saying like who this person is that we're talking to, not what we talk about. Because I think, people find people interesting, and it's hard to break a
yeah,
conversation down to, it's like an hour, 2 hours, sometimes podcasts. It's hard to break it down into the small
yeah.
bits. So, yeah.
So anybody listening who wants to start a podcast, I highly recommend you do because it's amazing. But, and I think you'll agree with me, don't underestimate the work. It's not
Yeah.
simply recording it and it's over. There's so much
Yeah.
post editing. Do you take out the pauses?
Nope. No.
No? Okay.
No, don't do any. So for the most part, we do start to finish. Like I'll crop out maybe the awkward mic grabs beginning or whatever, and then I'll add at the end. But um, yeah, I say a lot, or sometimes I might be in the more
Mm,
like a valley girl, and I'll say like a lot, and that's definitely in. I think I had one episode where I couldn't stop saying awesome for some reason. And when I
yeah.
listened to the episode, I'm like, oh my God, can't you pick another word than awesome?
Yeah.
But that's real. That's real
Yeah.
life. It happens like that. And yeah, so I think mostly it's just
And
adjusting.
it's really only you who notices that, by the way.
Yeah, I'm sure that my husband said that too, I think because I care about what I'm doing, I'm hypercritical of myself, and it means so much to me, the project. So I want it to be the best it can be. So, but sometimes that's hard because sometimes everything they say is awesome. It's like, and I'm gonna just say that it's awesome. So,
Yeah,
um,
absolutely. Yeah.
yeah, but I think the biggest struggle for us in the beginning was definitely editing. Now we're kind of in our groove. Andre does the editing because we just had no freaking idea what we were doing at all. No
Okay.
idea. Like at all. No way. Like in the beginning, we started recording through the Anchor app. Like our first couple of
Mm.
episodes were like someone would call me and then I would record on their phone. It was just horrible. But
Yeah, the
the
first few, like, there's some in and
oh
out, and it gets
oh
choppy. And,
definitely because we were recording like through the phone, like literally like
yeah.
okay,
So it
so
works, folks, but it's not as great as having it
ideal.
on a mic, yeah, and
No, but
headphones.
it's the content, that was the thing is that people found the content really good. And I think, that was one disappointment. And then the other, well, not disappointment, but learning experience and less for
Mhm.
me and definitely more for my very patient husband who, decided that that's what he wanted to figure out, which is awesome.
Wow.
Um, but yeah, it was super frustrating because we were watching all these tutorials. What's best? What do we do? We had this amazing episode 13 with Antonio from Surf the Greats in person. And I felt like it was the best interview I'd ever done up until that point. I just felt like it was so good because it was in person. It was just awesome. And his story is so incredible. Only one recorded. So the whole episode is recording my voice and the echo of his voice. And
Oh,
let me
damn.
tell you, we went to a bunch of different professional sound editors. I have a friend that does like mixing for like huge name bands. I sent it to him and he was just finally like, no one is going to be able to save this. And of course, Antonio was like, let's re-record. It's no big deal. But for me,
Yeah,
if you know what I'm talking about, because it just
yeah.
feels like such a special moment. And for it to be recorded, it's like, oh gosh. So yeah, it's a little bit more, we have our vibe going and we have what works for us. So there's less work involved, but it was definitely a big, 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 big learning curve. Yeah.
Yeah, that episode with Antonio Leonard, I remember hearing you make mention of that. But
Yeah.
you would know it. That interview was solid, and he didn't sound like bored to be telling the story twice. Like, did you
Yeah.
basically retread the entire interview, or was it different?
No, it was different. It was totally different, but it was just as good. I mean, a similar thing happened with like Surfer Dan, which was episode 2, um, which is also a really special episode because he's a great friend of ours and a great friend of the show. And we always talk about doing a part 2 because in that the first one we recorded, he was like a little more stoked, and the second one we recorded, he was a little more like cynical. And so he was like, I really feel like I was just too cynical and I want to redo it. And I want people to feel good about the things that they say, so I definitely want to have him back on. And also we spent a whole weekend. We drove all the way up north and stayed with him and his dogs and had the best time ever up in
The upper
Marquette,
peninsula.
Michigan, the UP. Yeah.
Ah,
And so that's it happens. I don't know. It's
so did you stay in that little trailer of his, or
Yeah, well, we actually have a surf van, or we did at the time. We have since sold it. But we had a van with like beds in the back. So we just drove all the way up there and then parked in his uh garage. But he has like a couple his area is pretty cool. It's like it's off the beaten path. It's totally his own sanctuary. It was super fun. We took a bunch of local kids surfing and dropped off some boards that like we wouldn't use and wetsuits and stuff like that. So yeah, he showed us a man, it's like another world up there. Like seriously.
mm,
It's very untouched and pure, and you just, when you're walking around up there, it just feels really special, and everybody knows Surfer Dan. So that
Wow.
was cool when you're like
Yeah.
riding with him and he knows everybody, and it's just, it was sick. It was totally sick. Yeah.
So I had no idea until recently that, this Upper Peninsula of Michigan isn't
Hmm.
even connected to the sort of true Michigan. I don't know what's up with the US and you
Yeah.
guys with your floating states,
Right.
like
I know.
Alaska,
Alaska.
Upper Peninsula.
Yeah, I don't know about that either, but it is very it's very upper and lower. You can tell the difference as soon as you cross over the bridge. If you talk about, like in our episode, which I hope people listen to, we talk about kind of your experience with the Aboriginal or Native people of Canada. And when you go to the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, you definitely get that feeling of the Native spirit that's there. It's very powerful. I think if you're in tune with that type of stuff, you can feel that. There's lots of Native people working and around, and that you can meet that you might not see in this, southern part of Michigan, I guess.
Yeah.
And the reservations are beautiful. And I mean, when we were there, it was just a very like, you kind of feel that energy there. It's just kind of a different feeling than you get in the southern part of Michigan. So
You're
yeah.
putting that on my travel plans
Oh,
now. So that's
absolutely.
great.
Yeah. I highly recommend going up there. It's very
I,
special.
I kind of imagine it's similar in landscape to that section of Ontario that's just right across the lake from there. Is there like moose and black bear there and stuff?
I I think so, but I don't actually know.
Okay.
I'm sure there's bears because there's bears in Traverse City, which is like, I'll do the whatever. So Detroit this way. Okay, no, because I'm on the camera. Okay. So if Detroit is like over here, right?
Yeah.
Traverse City is like up here.
Okay.
Okay, so if Traverse City, no, wait, it's on this side. I got my map mixed up. It's on this side. No, Traverse City is here. And I know that they have bears. And then the
Okay.
Mackinac Bridge is like up here. So I feel like the bears come from the north down. So
Yeah, more than
I'm
likely.
sure there's bears. Yeah.
Right on, right on. So the Weird Waves podcast. So, okay, take us back, way back. How in the hell? This is the best question, like
Okay.
how did some person from Michigan City, Indiana, ever put her feet on a surfboard for the
Uh,
first time?
okay. Well, it's a good story. So when I was 19, I had what I guess we can call a quarter life crisis, or whatever you want to say, crisis of self. Broke up with my long-term boyfriend, got academically suspended from school, was probably 60 to 70 pounds overweight, just in a really weird spot.
Mm.
And I had this lady that I knew for a really long time. I was working at CVS, and she came up to my counter and told me that I looked like shit. And
Oh,
she
yeah.
said, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I don't know. I actually
Wow.
don't know, right?" And she said, "My daughter is teaching abroad in China. I feel like that would be something that you would be good at." And so on my break at CVS in the back room, I Googled like teach abroad or something. And the first thing that came up was be a nanny in New Zealand. So it was an ad, and I filled out the form. I would say 2 weeks later, I had an interview with a family, and I just took the first family. Don't recommend doing that. I do not recommend doing that, but that's what I did. And so I sold everything. I moved to New Zealand, um, and I became a nanny. And after 2 months of living in New Zealand, so like the nanny company that I was partnered with, they had different excursions or whatever. And oh, actually, you know what? I did this on the last podcast. I forgot. So no, the first time I went to the ocean was for a protest. One of the nannies that I met through the company was like, they're there's some like big oil drilling boat. Of course, it was American company. I think it's Adirondacks, and they're trying to tap into this place called Raglan, like outside on the coast. And I think people were paddling out to like the oil tanker and all this stuff. I didn't know about that, but just my friend was like, "Do you want to go to a protest?" I was like, "Sure." I just remember going to Notanui Beach where the protest was and just seeing all these people. And I had this little like garbage camera. I was filming everybody, and I was just in the ocean for like probably 3 hours straight. I just couldn't believe, like, not surfing, but just swimming. I couldn't believe the size of like what I was seeing. Like, you just couldn't see the other side. It's at the bottom of these like giant cliffs. It's pure paradise. And so everybody kept checking on me. "Taylor, are you okay?" And I was like, "I am good. I am so good. I'm just chilling out here, body surfing, whatever." I didn't even know that I was body surfing, but I was just I was in my own like world out there.
Yeah.
So I got another invitation to go to Raglan. Another nanny was like, "Oh, we're going to do this surf lesson in Raglan." I'm like, "Cool, sounds good." So we did a surf lesson. I was horrible, absolutely terrible, but I was obsessed with it. And I rented, all the other nannies were exhausted. I didn't stand up, and I just said, like, "How much is it for another day? Like, to rent for the rest of the day?" And the guy who's still my friend, his name is Miles Fatima, he said, "I'll just give it to you." I'm like, "Why?" And he's like, "Because I can tell that you're just stoked." I'm like, "Yeah, I'm stoked." And he's like, "Just don't steal it." I'm like, "I won't steal it." Right? So I was out there for a long time. And then, yeah, I lived like 45 minutes away from the ocean at that time. And I saved up all my money and got a board and would just go every weekend because I had the worst job ever. But I didn't care. And every weekend I would just go to Raglan. I would either sleep in the backpackers if I had enough money, or I would sleep in my car, and I would just surf. And I was awful because I was fat and unhealthy and eating like garbage and whatever. So I ended up getting a job in Raglan, the dream, the absolute freaking dream. A nanny working 2 full days a week and then one weekend a month. So I could wake up in the morning and surf before my shift if I wanted to, or I could surf in the evening. And the dad was on track and like in his prime to be a pro surfer. So he had all these boards. They gave me a wetsuit. They gave me just all this stuff. And I just got hooked up. Yeah, it was amazing. And I lived there for 3 years. It was incredible.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. So
That must
that
have been
was,
hard to leave. I
oh
mean,
yeah.
how
Well,
could you
that's
step
another
away from it?
story.
The kids the kids must have grown up or something.
No,
No?
no. They wanted me to stay, the family, because they they had 2 sets of twins, so it was 4 kids, and the youngest set was like basically only 1.5 more years until they even didn't really need a nanny anymore. And we were planning on just like, I was just so in love with this family, just an amazing family, and really took care of me and took care of their kids and were really good people. And I felt really invested in like helping them to raise these kids for another year and a half. And unfortunately, New Zealand has a very strict immigration system for extending your time there. It's a points-based immigration system, and I kind of got away with it for my first extension of my visa, I guess. So then I tried to go the business route, which I did have a business in along with my nannying. I was fixing wetsuits and kite surfing sales and like doing industrial sewing. And a shop that I had was like above this kiteboarding shop and surf shop. So I was like in the Mecca, and everybody tried to help me. Everyone. Like, how can we get Taylor to come home was basically what happened. So my visa got denied, and then all of the money that I had saved up went to my lawyer trying to stay in New Zealand, and it just didn't work out. And
Oh
sometimes
no.
you, yeah, sometimes you just have to call it, you know. It was really a
Yeah.
weird situation. And I learned, I would say, as much about myself in the 6 months after leaving New Zealand as I did in the 3 years that I was in New Zealand, because um, I had been molded into this specific type of person, and then to take that person and put them in the middle of Michigan, living back with her parents, not a business owner, not in school, you know, it was a very strange time. But I also found this other outlet, which was very cool. I had a mentor who was this 80-year-old guy with half of a foot and no teeth who worked on classic cars. And
Mm.
because of my sewing background, I was doing this industrial sewing for him. And um, I loved that job, and that was kind of what kept me sane. And then my boss from New Zealand told me about surfing in Michigan because his family owns blueberry farms in Michigan. And I was like, "You cannot surf in Michigan. What are you talking about?" And he's like, "You can." So I looked it up,
What year
and
would this have been,
this
Taylor?
2016, yeah, May, yeah, May 2016. So I Googled it, as you do, and I was like, this is actually a thing. So I called the surf shop, and I was going to get a board, and I saw that they were hiring. And I was like, oh. So I called them, and now this is Ryan Gerard's shop, Third Coast Surf Shop in New Buffalo, Michigan. And if you ask Dee Dee about this story, which she's told me, she said that it was like an angel had fallen down from the heavens because they didn't have anybody who to work, and they also didn't have anybody to teach surf lessons. And I called and was like, "Hi, I used to work in New Zealand, and I lived there for 3 years, and I used to surf there, and I need a job." And I had this interview, and they like hired me on the spot. So I moved, and I was only gonna stay in that area for like the summer, and then go to Australia. I was planning on restarting my business in Australia. I had lots of friends in like Byron Bay in that area, which is very much like Raglan. And then I met my husband, and we stayed, yeah. And it ended up being just a crazy. I mean, you think that you know what you're gonna do with your life, and then you don't. You have no idea.
Mhm.
So, yeah, I met Andre, and everything changed for me. It was really crazy, but really fun. It's been great so far.
We're gonna explore that, but I just want
Yeah,
to go back. Yeah, I just want to go back for
yeah.
a second because you said this abbreviation as if I was supposed to know what it is, and I'm thinking it
Oh,
must be an American company. What
oh,
what is CVS?
oh, sorry. Okay, CVS it's like a pharmacy. I don't know
Oh,
what it
okay,
stands for, but it's a like a Walgreens, if you know what a
gotcha.
Walgreens is. Yeah,
Yeah,
sorry. So it's a
and
very like a very average job.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. The other thing I find interesting is that here you are, an American citizen, trying to stay in New Zealand and Australia. And what I find interesting about that is that I'm Canadian, and for us, I actually think that
You can get
staying
two
in,
years.
yeah, I was going to say I've never tried, but I would imagine it might be easier as a Canadian because we're part of the Commonwealth, and so are they. But if I were American, I mean, where I'd be in a second, Hawaii. Like that's the
Everybody
one.
says that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like as a Canadian, I'm so jealous. We do not have a tropical state that we can go to. I remember hearing at one time like Canada was in talks of like buying Bermuda or at least like having some kind of travel and currency agreement that we could go there. But no, I mean Hawaii. So what are your thoughts about that?
Well, I think that Hawaii is a I haven't been to Hawaii. I'll preface it with this. I haven't been to Hawaii. And I never really had an urge to go and live there. I know a lot of people that are living there. I think it's very expensive,
Mm.
first of all. And I also think that there are a lot of issues with everybody trying to go there,
Yeah,
you
I would
know?
imagine.
So I think that there's a lot of issues with the Hawaiian culture and the people that are not either born there or like, come from the mainland, like mainlanders and
The
the either the
Howleys, I think, or
yeah, yeah, I think there's some issues there is what I've heard and different people that I've met traveling, native Hawaiians and not native Hawaiians. I think it's just complicated, but I think between
yeah,
that and everybody says California, and I just don't want to live in California at all.
yeah.
I was there in September, and there's too many rules there for me. I just
Mm.
was really surprised by the amount of like, no skateboarding, no this, no, 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 no. I was really
Really?
shocked. Yeah, in
Wow.
Indiana, I could do whatever the hell I wanted to do until someone told me
Yeah,
no.
yeah.
And I was really surprised by that. And not to like, if you live in California and you love it, that's awesome. If you live in Hawaii and you love it, that's great. But it didn't seem like anything that I really wanted to do. And like, I'm not a epic surfer by any stretch of the
Mhm.
imagination. If I was to go back to Raglan now, I could definitely take advantage of the waves better than I ever could when I was there.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, I don't know.
No,
It
that's fair.
wasn't,
I just was
yeah,
curious. Not everyone has to want to go there.
yeah,
As a surfer, I would think, oh, maybe
yeah.
she has Hawaii in her mind, but that's fair.
Yeah, I think it's not. I guess that's why I already have an answer, because it's already something that people have asked me a lot, especially even more California than they have Hawaii. But
Yeah,
I don't know, just never was on my list.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So, yep,
So Andre, what
yes.
was it about meeting this guy that
Oh gosh.
was more powerful than catching waves that kept you in Indiana?
Yeah. So with Andre, it's really funny because I think that sometimes you meet people when you're like not trying to meet people,
Hmm. That's
you like,
usually the best time.
yeah, yeah, when you're fully not looking to meet anybody. I was just really, I had kind of dated a little bit and then was basically like, this is pointless. I'm moving. I'm not gonna like try to do anything because I'm leaving. I'm not staying here. And I was feeling very alienated from other like Americans. I was feeling very lonely because my lived experience didn't match with the lived experience of the people my age, but then people that I were meeting that were older than me also kind of didn't understand my experience. So I was feeling very like alone, and it's hard for someone like me. I mean, it's hard for anybody, but I'm definitely an extrovert. Like, I like to meet
Mm.
people and talk to people and share ideas and thoughts, and I just wasn't I was just, there was a missing link there for sure. And then I meet Andre, whose life in some ways for traveling kind of mimics mine. So Andre is Ukrainian, but lived in the country of Belarus, which is right next to Ukraine,
Hmm.
and left the country 19, tried to stay, kind of like very similar type of thing. And he was just so smart, and I could just talk to him about these things that he had seen the same things that I had seen while traveling, and he had seen the world in a similar way. And I'm a very big personality. I'm very opinionated. Whatever I believe is what I believe. And for a lot of people, I think it's hard to say like, no, that's not right. And he will. And that's,
Uh,
for me, very interesting. Someone who will say like, actually, no, blah, blah, blah. This is what I think about that, and I don't agree with you. And I like that and I respect that. So yeah, it was just a weird like thing, and we met and we were married like 6 months later.
wow. Whoa.
Yeah, I know. It's super crazy, and like not everybody, but a few people were like, "Oh, is it a green card marriage?" and like all this stuff. And it's not, but it is. It definitely, I could see how people would think that. I mean, we've been
Wow.
married for almost 4 years now, and um I love him. I definitely like, I always joke that when I was dating before, like everybody thinks that they want to date a surfer girl. Like they think that if they don't surf, or they think they want to date a surfer guy because they're like so wild and adventurous. And then that ends up being the exact reason why they fight, because you're so wild and adventurous, you know? And
Yeah.
that was a huge, not issue, but that was definitely a reason why prior relationships never really worked out. And with Andre, he was like, "Yeah, let's go, let's do this, let's go to frickin' see Surfer Dan up north, or let's drive across and see Larry in Canada, or go whatever." And like that's the type of person that I want to be with, and I don't get sick of. So we don't so far haven't gotten sick of each other, which is great.
Amazing. Great story. Yeah. So have the people who might have thought it was malintent, have they come around now after seeing how strong you guys are together? And
Yeah, well, I think, it's not like anybody thought, if you know me, you know that I'm going to do whatever I want to do. Like, no one's ever
mm,
going to tell me not to do something. And actually, we're both not surprised, but definitely happy that both of our families accepted everything with just being stoked about it. And it was really fun. I did have so one cousin that was like drunkenly like, "I didn't realize that you actually loved him, and now that I see you guys together, I realize you actually love him." And I'm like, "Yeah, like he's my husband." But
wow.
I think that that's just like, if you don't know, you don't know. Like if you hear whatever. I mean, green card fraud marriages happen 100%. Let me tell
Yeah.
you, 100%. It's a very good amount of the marriages that happen, actually. And when you go for your interview to prove that like this is a real thing, you can kind of like see the vibe,
Yeah.
But so I don't want to discount anyone's feelings. I don't think anyone was like, "Oh, Taylor, so whatever." But like, you know, it we're still together. I don't know. I don't have to prove anything
Perfect.
to
You
anybody,
don't have to,
like
no, you don't have to prove anything.
yeah, it
Some
is weird.
people meet,
Yeah.
some people meet, they're married the next day. Like there's no rule book on
Yeah,
these
yeah.
kind of life things, right?
Yeah, I just and I it nobody was malicious. That was the thing. It was,
Mm.
and it was like literally like maybe four people, and it was all pretty hilarious when I was like, "No, it's like a marriage, like a,
Yeah.
with love in there."
Right on. Well, my wife loves me, but she is
Right.
not my assistant, making the podcast. That's some love right there. I mean, these things
Well,
are a lot of work.
yeah, that's true. Well, I think we can be very yin and yang. So I'm definitely the talker, that's for sure. And for whatever reason, I've always had people just want to talk to me. I don't know why. It's almost always been that way my life. I'll just meet random people and just talk to them for a long time. It actually happened to me the other day too, when I was just like doing nothing. And it just happens, and I don't know why. But you know, Andre has talked to me about that skill, and he's very good at finding the way that things should be on a like technical level. That's kind of what he does for work. He's a problem solver.
Mm.
And so I think with editing it makes sense because he knows the way that he wants things to sound, and I just say yes. Because I
Yeah,
don't edit the
perfect.
episodes. So, yeah, it's that's that is the only like work related thing that we do together, I guess. But this just doesn't feel like work. It feels more like a fun hobby or something. I don't
Yeah.
know.
My wife and I did a summer of tree planting together,
Yeah.
and one day we were told, oh, rather than, plant trees on your own patch of land, you can actually plant together. So you put a tree, then she puts a tree, then you put a tree. It sounds glorious, right?
Right. But
Yeah,
your
by the
timing
end of
was
the
off.
day, get the fuck off my land,
Yeah, yeah. I get it. I get it. Yeah. I mean, it can be hard to work together on certain like projects, but I just think that's just marriage, like
Yeah,
sometimes it's that you don't need two people, especially two strong personalities. Like Andre and I both we're very strong in our own like way. So there's certain things where it's like you just do this by yourself because you don't need too many cooks in the kitchen. And same with
yeah.
me. I just want to do this on my own. With the podcast, it's a really good balance, which is sick because I don't know how that happened, but it just worked out.
Wow, that's great. Magical.
Yeah, it's so far it's been seriously, it's very fun. So we love it.
So you're in New Zealand, you came back to the US, thought you were going to leave, got married,
Yep.
fell in love, got married, and you stuck around. So then where did the idea for Weird Waves come, and how did that all come about into your life?
Yeah, so the podcast was super interesting. So I'm a hairdresser by trade, and I was working at this salon in the like in a pretty nice part of Chicago. And I would either take the train or drive, and it was a hefty commute, like an hour and a half, sometimes 2 hours. It was a big deal. And I would listen to podcasts all the time. And sometimes if I wanted to get myself like really hyped up in the morning in Chicago traffic, I would listen to Gary Vee, which like if you've ever had any sort of
Well,
business idea,
yeah,
he will like jack your shit up. He is like telling you that, and that's practical wise, like is it like incremental advice? No, but just to like inspire you and tell you,
yeah,
then it's cool. And he was going on about this podcast. This guy runs a Dragon Ball Z podcast, and he said this guy has the market cornered in a Dragon Ball Z podcast, and he makes whatever 60 grand a year, and he has the best life. He's stoked. He's super happy. And I was like, fuck, I could start a podcast. And I was driving and I was thinking about starting a podcast. And then I just started thinking about names and yeah, I just thought like waves and something about surfing because what we do on the lake, it's weird, and then weird waves. I actually have Stay Weird tattooed on the inside of my feet, and I've had that there for 7 years now. So weird has just kind of been whatever. And
yeah.
then I came back and Andre's parents were visiting from Belarus, and I was like, I'm going to start a podcast. And he was like, what? I'm like, I think I'm going to start a podcast about surfing. And he kind of thought about it and he was like, yeah, that's a good idea. So I started it, and it was really cool. I mean, it's cool for a lot of ways, but it inspired me as well to quit that job because I realized how much I hated that freaking job in Chicago.
Okay.
Hated it. So I went out on my own, and that was great. And so it's kind of just been a catalyst for a lot of really great things so far. We've been doing it for just over a year now. 54 episodes, I think.
Really, just a year. Wow. Okay.
Yeah,
Looking
so
at the amount of episodes you have, it just gives this illusion of like, very well established, been around a long time. But
no.
yeah, I guess you do one a week.
Yeah, it adds
And,
up quick.
yeah.
And it's a lot of work. And so we've taken 2 weeks off. So we took 1 week off when I was in North Carolina. That was maybe like 2 months ago. And then we took a week off this week to get caught up on all of our YouTube channel
Yeah.
it's not new, but we're still active and posting. So I'm
Yeah.
posting old episodes, bringing them to video format, and we'll see. I might
Yeah.
do that into next week too, because it's been super popular. People have really loved it. And it
Yeah.
kind of brings attention from old guests back to the platform and sharing and stuff. So that's pretty cool.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, it's only been a year, and it's just crazy also how much has changed in that year. It's just wild. Um,
So tell us about that. What has happened
well,
as a result from this podcast?
well, it we did so much traveling for the podcast. That was awesome.
Okay.
Not for the podcast, but like because of the podcast. We were visiting people, meeting up with different guests, and had the opportunities to travel to Jamaica to visit some people and just a bunch of different places. And so, obviously, with COVID, that changes things dramatically. We were planning on going to Toronto for a little, like a week before we moved to Florida so that we could see Larry and all the guys that surf greats and have some waves and stuff. Um, and so that's I think for everybody it's the same change in terms of like what has happened is that's changed the podcast.
Yeah.
That format is definitely COVID.
Yeah.
um
Sorry, our borders sealed up pretty tight right now.
yeah, well, it wasn't like that right at the beginning, so we could have still gone, but like, just you can see the writing on the wall. I understand people have to protect their own. I totally get it. It's just so strange right now. So
Yeah.
um but yeah, I think it's just been really cool to connect with all these different people, especially during the time where you're isolated.
Yeah.
Um, to talk to people that are kind of going through the same thing. And in the beginning, I was like, do I even want to talk about this? Like, do we even want to bring it up for anybody? But we we're all kind of like, I don't know, collectively like going through the stages of grief. I feel like just trying to
Yeah.
figure out what to do. And so having that, talking about it, if you kind of go back to, I don't know, episode maybe 30 or 40, that was when it just kind of started. It just started, and um, you can, it's relatable. So it's kind of like a
Yeah.
time-stamped episode, which was interesting.
Yeah.
But yeah, so um, but it's been the best thing. It's really great. I love doing it. It's I can't believe what it's turned into, which is crazy and awesome, and that people want to hear about it, but I get it.
So how did what did the audience look like? Like, how did that progression look like? Was it a couple of your friends listening to the first episode and then the second one you had 10 more people, or what did that look like?
Well, I don't really know. I think the first one, because it was Ryan Gerard,
Hmm.
and he has a bunch of, big time following, um, that we got like maybe 50 or 60 listens on our first episode, and that was really cool.
Yeah.
So then it just kept kind of growing. But what was really wild is that I believe it's only like 50% of our audience is from America. So I think that that's super cool. And I
Yeah.
love looking at the map of where our listeners are from. So
I
it's like
know.
50% America, 30% Canada, and then, so that's still 80%, right? Is the Northern
Yeah.
Hemisphere. But then 20%, like, and we'll get these random, like, countries I didn't even like. Gray Robinson, he's originally from Bermuda. So Bermuda was like on fire one week because they were all listening and they were going to back episodes. And then that was a huge percentage. We got Australia, New Zealand. We had the guy from Uruguay when I was there. So we had a bunch of like we have a big, I think maybe 6% is from Brazil because they have like a river surfing population. So that's my favorite thing, is to see like, where are these people that are listening? It's so crazy.
Yeah, and it must be fulfilling to know that you're creating an appeal beyond just the Great Lakes and Michigan City, Indiana.
Well, yes, I think it just shows that it's a one common thread that everybody has, and it might not even be surfing. It can be,
Yeah.
kiteboarding, skimboarding, or whatever. I've been trying to get this guy who builds these surf kayaks by hand from Australia on the podcast, and I just think that's a whole nother like vibe I didn't even know was a thing at all.
Yeah.
So I think having this common feeling is just so, it's just for everybody, and I think that's exciting,
Yeah.
I don't know.
I think it's great what you're doing. When I came up with the idea that I wanted to do a surfing podcast that would be very heavily Great Lakes centric as well, I basically wanted to see, is anyone else doing this as well? And,
Yeah.
and then there you came up. So yeah, and I was quite happy to listen and just really be reminded of the stoke on the Great Lakes. So I think it's fantastic. But now you're living in Florida,
Yeah.
and the way, surfing in Florida, it is a little bit weird, but it's a little more normalized. So
Yeah.
what's happening for weird waves now that you're in Florida?
Well, it's the same. I mean, I think it's always been, it's not really about me. That's how I feel about it. I think I'm just the person that asks the questions. Sometimes I will do something like this because people, want to know what my deal is, or want to know about Andre. So we have an episode where I interviewed Andre. So, people want to know about that. But I think, there's weird waves wherever you're at. So I ask every person I interview, like, what's the weirdest wave you've ever surfed? And even everybody, like ocean surfers, river surfers, everybody has a specific wave. Even like you might say river surfing is weird, but river surfers in their mind have a specific river wave that is weirder than the concept of river surfing. So, and it's also doesn't have to be what is the weirdest wave because of the wave. It can be the vibe or the people or the situation or whatever. It's just weird means whatever you want it to mean.
Yeah.
So I mean, I don't think that, living in Florida makes it any less weird. Florida can be pretty weird, actually.
Yeah.
And where we live, Lake Worth is not a surfing like spot. Everybody's kind of in like more north, and Jupiter or Cocoa Beach is popular, New Smyrna Beach, all like way more north, just because like we're kind of at the bottom and it kind of goes inland a little bit. So like the peninsula of Florida kind of kicks over towards the Gulf of Mexico kind of. And so the waves are definitely smaller. But I don't know, just wanted the warm weather. Yeah, well, I mean, I really like it. I like living in a spot that's not like we don't have a surf shop in my area. It's probably like a half hour away. I mean, maybe someone will build one. I don't think it's gonna be me. I don't know. I just like just talking to people, maybe like I'm not sure if a surf shop's in my future. I don't know about that, but I think
Do you plan to keep the show fairly Great Lakes heavy though, even with the move?
Well, it's not really Great Lakes heavy, to be honest with you. I would say out of like 60 episodes, that maybe 15 are Great Lakes. I don't even really know. But I mean, I don't have any sort of like, the plan is there's no plan. It's really just, if you want to talk to me about surfing and you seem like a cool person and you have a interesting story, which is literally everybody because humans are interesting, then we'll have you on the podcast, I've never like Googled really somebody and just said, I want to get this person on the podcast. It's always been like somebody either following us or we find them somehow, and or somebody that we had on the podcast was like, oh, you need to talk to this person. Just say, okay. So that's how we've done it, so I don't know. I just like to have a good mix.
Very, very communal.
Yeah. Well, it's just for anybody who wants to hear about people. I mean, it's people that surf. It's people that are in the water. So it's what are the kinds of people that are doing this sport? And turns out it's all different types of people.
And they're all weird people.
They're all weird. Everybody's weird.
People riding weird waves. We're all weird. We all have a really cool story to tell. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So hey, we're coming up to the end of the show.
Cool.
But I know somebody who, always likes to ask these 3 questions before a show ends. So my question number 1 is, what is the biggest oh shit moment you've ever had surfing?
Okay, I love this. Okay, this is fun. So my biggest oh shit moment, I definitely have 2. So the first one was at Natanui Beach, which is like it's the main beach in Raglan. And so there's a lot of rips at this beach, and everyone was surfing, like, you take the rip out to get out the back, and everyone was surfing on the right side of the rip. And I was like, it's breaking perfectly good on the left side of the rip and there's nobody there. So I'm going to go and take the rip to the left instead. And I was with my friend who, like, when you take someone surfing for the first time and they just assume that you're amazing at surfing, right? Mm-hmm. They just assume that you're just like, we're going to go surfing together and I'm going with Taylor and she's good. In Raglan, no, I'm not good because there's no way, right? So, and also I think I had only been surfing for like 2 years or a year and a half then. So definitely amateur hour. So I take this wave to the left, instantly go caught in a rip and out far, like far, very far. And the waves are not breaking. So I can't get out of the rip. So I start paddling like on a diagonal, right? Like you're supposed to do, don't panic. And I'm on this little, I call it my chicken nugget board. It's a 5'10". It's like not beefy. It's just like this little biscuit. And so I'm out there and it's like time is just, I know I'm out there for a long time, right? So I'm far out in the ocean. Like there is no one around me and I can barely even see like the back end of the wave that's crashing over the guys that were surfing on the right hand. And so I'm at the point where I'm out of the rip and I'm just bobbing in these raw, choppy, unbroken waves way out the back. And then I get to the point where I'm like, don't think about sharks, right? So I'm like, because if you start thinking about sharks, then the sharks come. So I start not thinking about sharks. So then I kind of take a break and then I start.
How can you not think about? I'm
not thinking about sharks. I just kept saying that in my head. I'm like, just paddle and don't think about sharks. And so
but you're actually
I was thinking about sharks. Of course I was thinking about sharks. Also, it was like gray and it was a day that if any day was going to be sharky, it was like this day, it was sharky. Yeah. So I didn't see a shark. But what happened is that I started paddling in and I really like started to get tired and it was like I wasn't getting close and all of a sudden, like I feel like this happens every so often, a huge ginormous wave comes and I'm right under it and I'm like I'm gonna catch this wave on my stomach, right? So I rode it in on my stomach. Yeah. And I still had to fight all my way back in and caught in the rip. Well, turns out I get on land, I like basically collapse. I'm hyperventilating. The like lifeguard comes over and they were like, yeah, boys, we got to call off the helicopter. So they were sending the helicopter to come and rescue me because my friend told them that I was fine, kept telling them that I was fine, right? So they were like, does she need help? While I'm like putting my hand up, they're like, does she need help? No, that's Taylor. She's so good at surfing.
Oh,
She's
man.
fine, right? Right? So that was one big oh shit moment. And then the other one was at Manu Bay, which is like the tourist, it's like the famous spot in Raglan. It's definitely the touristy place. And I was a charger when I lived in Raglan because I just didn't really know any fear, and all of my friends were so good that I would just go out with them. And I hadn't gotten myself into trouble at that point. So I get out there, it's big. It was big. It was like triple overhead, maybe, like way too big for me. It was like not even, there was no reason for me to be out there.
Yeah.
And the set waves were triple overhead. Let's be realistic. The set waves were triple overhead. The like, you know, intermediate waves were maybe like double, but it was big for me. And I was fine. I could get out there, and I was duck diving fine. And I was out there with a bunch of Japanese guys. And all of a sudden this guy looks at me, and he kind of looks at the wave, and it's like doing this funky thing that's coming at us, and it just all of a sudden like shoots super wide. So it's definitely a wipeout set. And he just looks at me with this fear, right? Japanese guy. And I'm like, yeah, I feel your fear, dude. And so we both totally wipe out, me and him, and there was two other dudes. And we come up, and he starts saying something to me, and I don't know because I don't speak Japanese. And then we're going under, and I probably took like 10 solid like waves on the head, like one and again and again. And on the 10th one, I could, like, I was upside down, and I could feel like the rocks on the bottom with my hands. And I mentally was like, okay, I'm going towards the light, like I'm done. I mentally was like, I just remember that moment being like, it's been a good time.
Wow.
It has been great. And I really remember that. And then all of a sudden my back.
That was a holy shit moment.
Yeah, it was a holy shit moment. I was mentally fully like I just remember having that calm conversation with myself, like, you know, where it's gonna be like, it was a good time, and everybody will know that you were doing what you loved and whatever. Like this whole thing seriously like went through my head. I was like 20, I think 20 years old. And all of a sudden I feel this pull on the back of my like rash guard. And I just feel this pull, and all of a sudden I go, and it's my friend on a jet ski, and he pulls me out, and he's like, you fucking asshole. I can't believe you would go out on a day like this. Who do you think you are? I gotta save you. And all these other Japanese dudes who don't know how to speak any English. I don't know what they're saying. Everyone's freaking out. Like, he's like, how could this happen? So he was in the bigger spot doing toe-ins. Okay, and just ended up, that was where he was bringing in and launching his jet ski. And it just happened to be that he saw because I always wore bright colors. I always wore bright colored, neon, obnoxious looking stuff because my mom wanted me to do that. So she said, if anything happens to you, they can find you because you'll be wearing this really obnoxiously colored thing. So,
my wife makes me wear a white rash guard over my wetsuit when I go out and she's with me to watch.
Yeah. So that's how he knew that it was me. And yeah, that was so gnarly.
You had your life saved. You were
100%. I felt, and I guess I don't know, like, how would I know what would happen next? I guess I don't know that. But I just remember, I think after the second hold down, being like, okay, just remembering what people have told me about hold downs, right? So you like calm yourself down and you try, you try to like relax your body so that you're not most people when they like drown from a hold down, it's because they panic and that exhausts your body, and then you like suck water in and you like kind of like drown yourself that way. So I remember that, my friends that were probably doing the toe-ins that day were telling me you just gotta relax and stay calm, and you can hold your breath for longer than you think you can. So who knows if I was just like trying to also calm myself down, like instead of being like, oh my god, like I'm gonna die and just freaking out, instead I was like, it's fine, it's like,
Wow.
I don't know, I actually don't know, but I just know that it was super wild. So yeah, that's
Amazing. Well, it's good that you at least knew some of those things and you were extended your life a little bit longer than maybe it could have, and then you got
yeah.
rescued. Perfect. Yeah.
Yeah, so that was definitely an ocean moment.
That's your holy shit moment. So then the next question she likes to ask is, what is the weirdest wave you've ever ridden?
Yeah, I should know the answer to my own question, but it is actually a hard one to.
I never said they were your questions.
Yeah,
Oh,
oh,
okay.
from someone's questions. Uh, actually, let me think about this for a second, because I've definitely ridden some strange ones.
Okay.
Gosh, I don't know.
We can skip to the next question if you want. And
Let me
come
just
back.
think. Let me just think for a sec. I feel like I'll come up with something. Okay, I'll say it was less the wave than it was like the experience, I'll say. So, oh, actually, you know what? No, I know exactly what it is. So after we got married, Andre and I, there was going to be waves, and they were garbage bag waves, and it was snowing. It was crazy, insane, and that was the weirdest thing, because I had just gotten married. It just happened that there were waves on the day that we got married. It just happened that we had time to go home and change and surf before we left for our honeymoon. So I think weird in terms of like all of the situations lining up. And so we like asked the people who took pictures of our wedding to like take some pictures of us surfing. so so we have these really funny, there's only maybe two of us half riding like a really not, I mean, barely even anything that's a wave, because it was so just like blasting wind and like from every direction and snow and just wild. But the fact that we could actually like each one of us did go out for maybe like 20 minutes and actually did catch waves, I think that was pretty weird. So
Nice. Solidifying your marriage in the surf.
that's right. That's how you do it.
And the last question she asks is, what's next for you? I think I'm not sure.
Yeah.
What does you
Yeah.
normally say?
Yeah.
What's next for you? Okay.
Yeah, I usually say what's next for you. So, what's next for me is, so we just moved to Florida and we bought a house, and it's our first house. So we'll be working on this, and then, you know, I just opened a business, a salon, and I'm building that. So I'm definitely spending a lot of time working on getting clients and building that up, and kind of working on, I have been working on this YouTube channel, not for the podcast, but my own, doing like surf related hair videos. So how to take care of your hair in the surf and all of this type of stuff. And then hopefully travel. I hope that that things open up a bit more. Andre and I can go travel. We really want to go and visit, take advantage of the opportunity to visit the people that we've had on the show, and just kind of see what happens. And then, yeah, just keeping on with the podcast and surfing here. And that's what's next for me.
Right on. Yeah. Well, if you come up to Canada up this way, let me know too, for sure. We got some good waves here on Lake Huron, and I'm not
Yeah.
too far from Antonio and Larry. They're about a 2 hour drive for me.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. We definitely want to go explore Canada more. So once that's actually an
Yeah.
opportunity, I definitely want to take advantage of that.
It must be hard for your husband too. I assume his family is in the Ukraine and he's
They
not
actually were able to come over. They were just here,
really.
literally. Yeah, they were just here 2 weeks ago or last week. Yeah, so I don't know. I think for us mainly it's more about so I mean they have Belarusian passports, so they're
Okay.
fine. Where I think Andre also would be fine traveling, but me with my American passport, it's like no, big X,
Yeah.
right? So yeah, but so I think it's less about actually being allowed to open up and more about kind of like seeing how things progress with like on an economic level, just making sure we kind of have our house in order, the house that we just bought, before we kind of take off to travel too much. So
Gotcha. All
yeah.
right. So my final questions that I like to ask on
Oh yeah.
Permastoked. So when you're not doing hair and you're not surfing, what else are you stoked about?
Oh, that's a good question. Um, well, I really like I'm interested in business, so I'm interested in businesses. I'm stoked on that. So I have another little like side business that I'm kind of learning and working on. So I definitely enjoy trying all sorts of new things. I'm also stoked about learning Russian, trying to learn Russian. Obviously, I married into that. I like to be able to communicate with everybody. So
Yeah.
that's something that I'm definitely working on. It needs a lot of work. Sometimes it's not that being stoked about it because it's very difficult, but
Yeah.
yeah, I like doing that. And I'm also really stoked on dancing. I'm ready for like there to be concerts and stuff again, so that I can just
Yeah.
get loose and shake my
Yeah.
tail feather, whatever. And
Yeah.
yeah, so that's what I would say.
That was one of the most disappointing parts of COVID for me. I had tickets to a Journey concert. I
Oh,
was so
geez.
stoked. Yeah. And that got canceled. They couldn't come to Canada, obviously. So,
Yeah, I know.
yeah,
There's
it'll be
been.
nice to do some of those normal things again. Even like, I really miss going to the movies. And I'm a huge, like, superhero, like,
Okay.
blockbuster movies nerd. And so, not being able to, like, go see the Wonder Woman and the new Ghostbusters that was supposed to come out, it's kind of a
Mm-hmm.
bummer. Like, those are the real, some of those summer things I look forward to for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. And another question I like to ask people is because it helps me too is are you reading anything or watching anything really good that you're stoked about right now?
Well,
Especially during these COVID times.
well, I started reading 1984. I don't know if I would recommend reading that right now if you want to
Oh
be
yeah.
stoked, because yikes, that's pretty
It's a
crazy.
little too realistic
Yeah,
even
it's
for that right
it's super
now.
real. Yeah, yeah. So that's pretty I've been reading that. Um and then Andre and I love Scrubs, that TV show,
Yeah.
because
Okay.
it's so brilliant, and I think we've watched it together a couple times, but when you need to cheer up, definitely just some Scrubs is awesome. And
Wow,
yeah.
that's a bit of a callback. Zach Braff. Jeez.
Yeah, it's so that show's just it's actually super brilliant. Like all the
Yeah.
jokes are really high level and very smart, and yeah, so that's what I can't think of anything else recently that I've watched or was reading, but Yeah, that's
There's a show on Netflix. I'm just thinking of you because of the surfing connection.
yeah.
That me and my wife recently watched. There's 4 seasons on Netflix of a show called Animal Kingdom. You ever
Okay.
heard of this? Yeah, I've seen this show like on the, when you're going through the previews. I've seen it so many times. I've skipped over it. I never thought anything of it, even though the advertising picture of it is like this big wave and it's turning into
Mm-hmm.
flames. This show is incredible. It's not about animals. It's like a family crime drama.
Oh, what?
Yeah, set in California, and it's a mom and her 3 or 4 sons, and she basically like comes up with these jobs for them to do. So the show is super suspenseful because they're doing these like intricate jobs. Like in the one episode, they like this like mega church has a big fundraiser, and so they break into the church vault, and it's very elaborate. But the whole background of the show, it's set in, I think it's called Ocean View, California. And the guys, like the brothers, are really into surfing. And there's, the one was trying to be a pro surfer at one time. It's just really good. I can't recommend that show anymore. Like for anyone out there struggling, you've watched everything. You're at the bottom of the barrel now during
Yeah.
COVID. Check out Animal Kingdom. It is top notch.
Yeah. Okay, I'll have to check that out because I like suspenseful ones.
Yeah.
So,
Well, Taylor, it has been so awesome talking to you, and I congratulate you on your achievements and the podcast and your recent move and this business you're building. I think you've got, the right attitude, and I'm excited to see what happens next for you.
thanks so much for doing this collaboration. It's super fun to just see how other people do things, and like I said, it's always good to talk about yourself. It's always fun.
Yeah, it's great. No, I'm really great that our podcasts, they already had a common thread, and I'm really glad to see them like, yeah, on the same level and collaborating. And I want my listeners to know about your show, and I want your listeners to hear about my
Yeah.
show. So yeah, I
No, it's
think
great. Thank you so much.
yeah, thanks for being here. Mahalo to you, Taylor, and stay stoked.
I will. Thank you. Bye.